I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms, stitches still fresh, while my best friend was lying in my house with my husband. I gave her my keys, my trust, and she gave me betrayal. But I don't cry. I plan. I waited. I smiled at her fake sympathy, and I smiled harder when I hacked into our home camera. Caught them red-handed. I made copies, printed everything. Then, at our yearly family BBQ, I showed everyone their dirty secret. I passed out photo envelopes instead of drinks. Faces dropped. Forks froze. They ran. But the truth was already out. You don't betray a woman who's been through hell. I'll drag you back with me. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is in your place right now. But let me take you back to where it all started, 3 weeks earlier, when I thought I was the luckiest woman alive to have such devoted people in my corner. The accident happened on a Tuesday. One moment I was driving home from my mother's house, humming along to the radio, and the next I was waking up to the steady beep of machines and the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. My body felt like it had been put through a blender. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, enough stitches to make me look like a patchwork doll. "Edith? Oh my God, you're awake!" Sarah's voice cracked as she squeezed my hand, her tear-stained face hovering over mine. Behind her, Marcus stood with dark circles under his eyes, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it for days. "How long?" I whispered, my throat raw from the breathing tube they'd removed hours earlier. 4 days, Marcus said, moving closer to stroke my forehead. 4 days of hell, baby. We thought we might lose you." Sarah nodded vigorously, mascara smudged under her eyes. "I haven't left this place. Marcus and I have been taking shifts. The doctors said you're going to be okay, but recovery will take time, weeks, maybe months." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me as I looked at the 2 most important people in my life. Sarah and I had been inseparable since college. She was the sister I never had, the maid of honor at my wedding, the first person I called with good news or bad. And Marcus, my husband of 8 years, who looked like he'd aged a decade in 4 days. "I need to take care of things at home," I said weakly. "The house, the bills." "Don't even think about it," Sarah interrupted, her voice fierce with protective love. "Marcus and I have everything handled. You just focus on getting better." Marcus nodded. "Sarah's been incredible, Edith. I don't know what I would have done without her. She's been making sure I eat, helping with the house, dealing with insurance calls. She's an angel." I watched as Sarah blushed at the praise, tucking a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. Something flickered in her eyes when she looked at Marcus. Gratitude, maybe? Relief? I was too drugged and exhausted to analyze it then. "Here," I said, fumbling for my purse on the bedside table. "Take my keys, Sarah. You shouldn't have to ask Marcus to let you in every time you need something." The moment I placed those keys in Sarah's palm, I sealed my own fate. She closed her fingers around them like they were precious gems, and when she looked up at Marcus, they shared a look I couldn't quite decipher, a look that would haunt me for weeks to come. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll take such good care of everything. I promise." If I had known then what that promise really meant, I would have thrown those keys out the window. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of physical therapy, medication schedules, and visits from concerned friends and family. But through it all, Sarah was my constant. She arrived every morning at 9, sharp with my favorite vanilla latte from the coffee shop downtown, stayed through lunch, and returned in the evenings with updates about my house and life outside these sterile walls. "Marcus is holding up well," she'd say, settling into the uncomfortable visitor's chair like it was her second home. "I made him that chicken casserole he loves last night. Poor guy's been living on takeout and stress." I appreciated her care, but something was shifting in Sarah that I couldn't quite place. She'd always been put together, but now she seemed luminous. Her skin glowed with a radiance I'd never noticed before. Her hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, was styled in loose waves that caught the light. And the perfume. When had she started wearing such an expensive scent? "You look amazing," I told her one afternoon as she arranged fresh flowers in a vase by my window. "Like, really amazing. That glow looks good on you." She turned, her cheeks flushing pink. "Oh, you know how it is. I've been taking better care of myself lately. New skincare routine, hitting the gym more." She paused, biting her lower lip with a secretive smile. "And I've been seeing someone." My heart lifted despite my pain. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Who is he?" "It's complicated," she said, turning back to fidget with the flowers. "He's someone I've known for a while, but we just recently connected on a deeper level. It happened kind of suddenly, actually, right around the time of your accident." "Well, I want details when I'm feeling better. You deserve happiness, Sarah. You've been alone too long." Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, and she practically lunged for it, her face lighting up as she read the message. The smile that spread across her lips was intimate, knowing, the kind of smile a woman gets when she's falling hard for someone. "Is that him?" I teased, but she was already typing back, her fingers flying across the screen. "Maybe," she said without looking up, and I caught her biting back a grin. Marcus's visits, meanwhile, became increasingly brief and distant. He'd arrive looking harried, kiss my forehead absently, and spend most of the time staring at his phone or making work calls in the hallway. When I complained about feeling disconnected from him, he brushed off my concerns. "I'm just stressed, baby. The accident scared me more than I care to admit, and work's been crazy. Johnson's been breathing down my neck about the Morrison account." But something felt off about his explanations. The Marcus Y married was a man who faced problems head-on, who drew closer during difficult times, not further away. This version of my husband felt like a stranger wearing his face. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when I asked Sarah to do me a favor. "I need my laptop from home," I said, trying to sit up straighter in bed. "The doctor says I might be discharged next week, and I want to start working remotely. Staying productive will help me feel more normal." Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Your laptop? It should be on my desk in the home office. You know where it is." For a moment, something flickered across her face. Panic? Guilt? But it was gone so quickly, I wondered if I'd imagined it. "Of course," she said, but her voice sounded strained. I'll grab it tomorrow morning. First thing." "Are you okay? You look pale." "Just tired," she replied quickly, standing up and gathering her purse. "I should probably head home and get some rest. Big day tomorrow." As she leaned down to kiss my cheek goodbye, I caught a whiff of her perfume again. But underneath it, there was something else, a scent that was familiar but out of place. It took me a moment to recognize it. Marcus's cologne. Coming home after 2 weeks in the hospital felt like entering a parallel universe. Everything looked the same, but somehow felt completely different. The lighting seemed off, the furniture arrangements slightly as cue, like someone had been living my life while I was away. "Welcome home, beautiful," Marcus said, wheeling me through the front door in the wheelchair the hospital had insisted I use for the first few days. "I know it's not perfect, but I did my best to keep things together." I surveyed my domain with new eyes. The throw pillows on the couch were arranged differently than I'd left them. My favorite coffee mug, the ceramic one with the chip on the handle that I'd refused to throw away for 3 years, was in the wrong cabinet. In the bathroom, there was an expensive-looking shampoo bottle I'd never seen before, sitting next to my usual drugstore brand. "Whose shampoo is this?" I asked Marcus when he helped me into bed that first night. He glanced at the bottle and shrugged. "Oh, that's Sarah's. She's been using our shower sometimes when she stays late to clean or organize. I told her to make herself at home. She's been such a huge help." The explanation made sense, but something about it sat wrong in my stomach. Since when did Sarah use our shower? In 15 years of friendship, she'd always gone home to her own apartment, no matter how late she stayed. Sarah continued her daily visits, but now the dynamic felt different. She moved through my house with a familiarity that seemed too comfortable, too intimate. She knew where I kept the good dish towels, how I liked my coffee prepared, which cabinet held the fancy dinner plates we only used for special occasions. "You're like a mind reader," I laughed one afternoon as she pulled ingredients from my pantry to make my favorite soup. "I can barely find things in my own kitchen right now." "Oh, you know me," she said with a casual shrug, but I caught her exchange a quick glance with Marcus across the room. "I've just been spending so much time here lately. It's like a second home." More than that, she'd begun regaling me with elaborate stories about her mysterious new romance. "He's also incredible, Edith. So attentive, so passionate. We have this connection I've never experienced before," she gushed while arranging my medications in their weekly dispenser. "He makes me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world." "What's his name? What does he do?" I can't tell you yet. It's complicated because of his situation, but trust me, when the time is right, you'll understand everything." Her phone was constantly buzzing with text messages that made her blush and smile. She'd excuse herself to take private calls in my backyard, pacing back and forth while speaking in hushed, intimate tones. When she thought I wasn't looking, I caught her taking selfies in my bathroom mirror, posing with pouty lips and bedroom eyes. Marcus, meanwhile, had become a ghost in his own home. He worked late every night, claiming the Morrison account was consuming his life. When he was home, he slept in the guest room so you can rest without me disturbing you. But I heard him on the phone at all hours, speaking in low murmurs I couldn't quite make out. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I was getting stronger, moving around the house more independently, when I decided to change the sheets on our bed. As I pulled back the comforter, something small and glinting caught my eye. An earring, a delicate gold hoop that definitely wasn't mine. I picked it up with trembling fingers, my heart hammering against my healing ribs. I recognized it immediately. Sarah had worn these earrings to my birthday dinner last year. I'd complimented them, said they made her look sophisticated. When Marcus came home that night, I was waiting for him in the living room, the earring sitting on the coffee table between us like a tiny golden accusation. "Whose is this?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. He looked at the earring, and his face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, recognition, panic, then practiced innocence. "Oh, that's Sarah's," he said, sitting down across from me. "She lost it last week when she was helping me organize your jewelry box. We searched everywhere for it. She'll be so relieved we found it." "She was organizing my jewelry box? In our bedroom?" "Well, yeah. She wanted to make sure everything was clean and ready for when you came home. She's been so thoughtful about those kinds of details." The explanation was logical, reasonable, even touching. But as I looked into my husband's eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before, the practiced ease of a lie told many times over. That night, after Marcus fell asleep in the guest room, I lay awake in our empty bed, staring at the ceiling. And that's when I remembered the security cameras. We'd installed them 2 years ago after a rash of break-ins in our neighborhood. Discrete cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway, all connected to our home network. I'd forgotten about them entirely during my hospitalization, but now they felt like a lifeline. A lifeline to the truth I was desperately afraid to find. At 3 a.m, with the house silent around me, I crept to my home office and powered up my laptop with shaking hands. The security camera app loaded slowly, each second stretching like an eternity as my heart hammered against my healing ribs. I scrolled back to the 3rd day of my hospitalization, the day Marcus had called me crying, saying he missed me so much he could barely function. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. The footage was crystal clear, and it destroyed my world in high definition. First, Sarah's key turning in my front door. She moved through my house with purpose, not like someone checking on things, but like someone who belonged there. She went straight to my bedroom. I could see her on the hallway camera, and emerged 15 minutes later wearing my silk robe, her hair down and flowing. Then, Marcus appeared, home early from work. The timestamp showed it was barely past 3 o'clock. What happened next made my stomach turn to acid. They fell into each other's arms like lovers reunited after years apart, not like two people comforting each other through a mutual friend's crisis. Their kiss was desperate, hungry, all hands and tangled limbs. Marcus lifted Sarah against the hallway wall, her legs wrapping around his waist as she threw her head back in a way that spoke of familiarity of countless other times. I forced myself to keep watching as they moved toward my bedroom. The camera couldn't see inside, but I could fill in the blanks with devastating clarity. They were in there for over an hour. The most damning footage came afterward. I watched Sarah emerge wearing my clothes, a sundress I'd been looking forward to wearing when I got home. They sat on my couch, Marcus's head in her lap as she stroked his hair. The intimacy was nauseating in its tenderness. "I feel so guilty," I could read his lips saying. "This feels wrong." Sarah's response was harder to make out, but I caught enough words. "Deserves better. Been unhappy. Meant to be." She was comforting him, reassuring him. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a calculated affair between two people who had convinced themselves they were in love. I screenshotted everything, downloaded video files, organized them by date and time. As I dug deeper into the footage, the scope of their betrayal became clear. This hadn't started during my hospitalization. It had been going on for months. I found evidence from 2 months ago. Sarah letting herself in with a spare key while I was at my book club, Marcus arriving home from work early. From 6 weeks ago, the two of them in my kitchen, cooking dinner together, feeding each other bites of food like newlyweds. They'd been having an affair in my home, in Mea. I bed using my tragedy as cover for their guilt. But the worst footage was from just 3 days ago. Sarah, sitting in my living room, on the phone with me at the hospital, telling me how worried she was about Marcus's emotional state. The camera captured what I couldn't see through the phone, Marcus lying with his head in her lap, her free hand stroking his chest while she lied to my face about taking care of him. "He's barely eating," she'd said to me, while the timestamp showed takeout containers from an expensive restaurant scattered on my coffee table. "I'm so worried about his mental health." And Marcus, my Marcus, had smiled up at her with the same expression he used to reserve for me. I printed everything, photos, timestamps, video stills that left nothing to interpretation. As the printer whirred through page after page of evidence, I felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. They thought I was broken, helpless, dependent on their kindness. They thought they could parade their affair in front of me while I smiled and thanked them for their devotion. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I was Edith fucking Morrison, and I'd been through hell and back. If they wanted to play games while I was down, they were about to learn what happened when I got back up. The annual family BBQ was 8 days away. Perfect. From that moment on, I became the greatest actress of my generation. "Sarah, you're an angel," I gushed the next morning when she arrived with coffee and croissants from the bakery downtown. "I don't know what I would have done without you." She beamed at the praise, settling into what had become her chair at my kitchen table. "You would have done the same for me. That's what best friends do. And Marcus has been raving about your cooking. He said your lasagna was better than his mother's." A flush crept up her neck. "Oh, he's just being sweet. I love taking care of the people I care about." The people I care about. The phrase hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning I was now equipped to decode. When Marcus came downstairs, Freshly showered and reaching for his coffee, I intercepted him with a kiss that lingered just long enough to make Sarah shift uncomfortably in her chair. "Good morning, handsome," I purred against his lips. "I'm so lucky to have you." His eyes flickered with guilt, but he managed a smile. "I'm the lucky one. How are you feeling today?" "Stronger, so much stronger. Actually, I was thinking, our annual BBQ is next weekend. I know I'm still recovering, but I don't want to cancel. It's such an important tradition." Sarah and Marcus exchanged a look that I pretended not to notice. "Honey, are you sure you're up for hosting?" Marcus asked. "That's a lot of people, a lot of stress." "Oh, but I won't be doing it alone," I said, smiling brightly at Sarah. "My wonderful best friend will help me, won't you? And you know how much you love our family gatherings." Sarah's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down. "Of course, I'd love to help, but maybe we should keep it small this year? Just immediate family?" "Absolutely not. I want everyone there. My parents, your parents, all the cousins, our college friends. I want to celebrate being alive, surrounded by all the people who love me." I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Besides, it'll be the perfect opportunity for you to tell everyone about your mystery man. I'm dying for them to meet him." The color drained from her face. "Oh, he might not be available that day." "Well, then bring him by afterward. I'm sure Marcus would love to meet him too, wouldn't you, honey?" Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. "Sure, of course." That afternoon, while Sarah ran errands and Marcus was at work, I got busy. I drove to 3 different photo printing shops, spreading the order across multiple locations, so no single employee would see the full scope of what I was printing. Professional quality prints, 8x10 glossy photographs that left nothing to imagination. I organized them in manila envelopes, each one labeled with a family member's name in my careful handwriting. Mom, Dad, Lisa, Tom, Uncle James, Aunt Patricia, the Hendersons, the college friends, Sarah's parents, 23 envelopes total. I practiced my speech in the mirror, perfecting the tone of wounded confusion that would make their betrayal even more devastating to witness. "Before we eat, I want to share something with all of you, something I discovered while I was recovering." "No, too dramatic." "I have something I need to show everyone, something that happened while I was in the hospital." "Better, more matter of fact. Let the photos speak for themselves." When Sarah returned that evening with groceries for the BBQ, I was waiting in the kitchen with a genuine smile. "You're incredible," I told her, helping unpack bags of hamburger buns and potato salad ingredients. "Planning a party while I'm laid up? It's like having a sister." "You are my sister," she said, and I caught the slight crack in her voice. "In every way that matters." "I feel the same way. That's why I got you something." I pulled out a small wrapped box and placed it in her hands. "A thank you gift for everything you've done." Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, expensive enough to assuage any lingering guilt she might be harboring, but not so expensive that it would seem suspicious. "Edith, you didn't have to." "I wanted to. You've been my rock through all of this. Both of you have." I looked meaningfully between her and Marcus, who had just walked in from work. "I honestly don't know what I would have done without you two taking such good care of everything." They stood there in my kitchen, accepting my gratitude for their betrayal, and I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my bones. 6 more days. The morning of the BBQ dawned bright and cloudless, the kind of perfect summer day that made you believe in fresh starts and second chances. I stood at my bedroom window, watching Marcus fire up the grill in our backyard, while Sarah arranged citronella candles around the patio. They moved together like a choreographed dance, anticipating each other's needs, sharing small touches and meaningful glances. When Sarah handed Marcus the barbecue tongs, their fingers lingered together just a moment too long. When she needed to reach something on a high shelf, he was already behind her, his hand resting on her lower back as she stretched. Watching them was like witnessing an alternate reality where I didn't exist. And maybe, in their minds, I didn't. Not as a real person with feelings and agency anyway. I was just an obstacle to navigate, a problem to manage until I was conveniently out of the way. "You two are amazing," I called out, stepping onto the patio with a pitcher of fresh lemonade, like a well-oiled machine. Sarah startled slightly, taking a quick step away from Marcus. "Just trying to make everything perfect for you." Mission accomplished. This looks incredible. And it did. They'd transformed our backyard into something from a magazine spread. String lights woven through the trees, fresh flowers in mason jar centerpieces, a buffet table draped in crisp white linens. If I didn't know better, I'd think they were celebrating something special. In a way, they were. This was their last day living in the fantasy where they could have their cake and eat it too. The guests began arriving at noon. My parents came first, Mom fussing over my recovery, while Dad fired up his annual argument with Marcus about proper grilling techniques. My sister Lisa brought her kids, who immediately claimed the swing set, their laughter mixing with the sound of sizzling meat and adult conversation. Sarah's parents arrived shortly after, her mother enveloping me in a hug that smelled like vanilla and concern. "Oh, sweetheart, you gave us such a scare," Mrs. Patterson said, holding me at arm's length to examine my face. "But you look wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful, Richard?" "Like she never missed a beat," Sarah's father agreed, kissing my cheek. "Though we have Sarah to thank for that. She's been texting us updates every day, making sure you had everything you needed." I turned to beam at Sarah, who was arranging potato salad on the buffet table with laser focus. "She's been incredible. I honestly don't know what I would have done without her." The college friends arrived in a cluster. Jenny and Mike from our old study group, Tom and his new girlfriend, the Henderson twins who lived across town. Each reunion brought more hugs, more expressions of relief at my recovery, more praise for Sarah's devoted friendship. "She's been posting about you constantly," Jenny told me while we watched Sarah help Marcus flip burgers. "We all felt so connected to your healing process because of her updates. She loves you so much." "I love her too," I replied, my voice warm with genuine affection. Because I did love Sarah, that's what made this so much worse. By 2:00, the party was in full swing. Uncle James was holding court by the beer cooler with his famous fishing stories. The kids had claimed the back corner of the yard for an elaborate game of tag. Aunt Patricia was interrogating Tom's girlfriend about her career prospects with the subtlety of a federal prosecutor. And through it all, Sarah and Marcus continued their careful ballet of secret intimacy. A hand brushed across a shoulder while passing condiments, eyes that met and held just a beat too long across the crowded patio. Sarah laughing at Marcus's jokes with the particular delight of a woman in love. "You know what I love most about today?" Sarah said, appearing at my elbow with a glass of wine and a conspiratorial smile. "Seeing you surrounded by everyone who adores you, it reminds me why family is everything." "Family is everything," I agreed, raising my own glass, "to the people who show up when it matters most." We clinked glasses, and I watched her face soften with emotion. For just a moment, I caught a glimpse of the Sarah I used to know, the one who drove 3 hours to hold my hair when I had food poisoning sophomore year, who helped me pick out my wedding dress, who cried harder than I did when my grandmother died. That Sarah was still in there somewhere, buried under months of lies and self-justification, but it was too late for her now. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, but instead I slipped into my home office and retrieved the manila envelopes from their hiding place in my desk drawer. 23 perfect bombs, each one personalized with a name written in my careful script. When I returned to the patio, I found Sarah giving an impromptu speech to the assembled crowd, her wine glass raised and her cheeks flushed with emotion. "I just want to say how grateful I am to be here today," she was saying, her voice carrying across the yard. "The last few weeks have reminded me what really matters in life: family, friendship, being there for the people you love when they need you most. The crowd murmured agreement, several people raising their own glasses. "Edith," she continued, finding me in the crowd and gesturing me forward, "you are the strongest, most inspiring woman I know. Watching you fight through this recovery has been humbling. You've shown us all what real courage looks like." Everyone applauded, and I felt genuine tears prick my eyes, because despite everything, despite the lies and betrayal and calculated cruelty, there was love in her voice, twisted, selfish, compartmentalized love, but love nonetheless. "Thank you," I said, my voice carrying clearly Aka. Ross, the suddenly quiet patio. "That means everything to me. All of you mean everything to me." I paused, looking around at the faces of everyone I held dear, everyone who had worried about me, supported me, celebrated my recovery. "Actually, before we eat, I have something special I want to share with all of you, something I discovered during my recovery that I think you should see." The crowd settled into expectant silence as I reached for the stack of envelopes I'd placed on the nearby table. "I have a little something for everyone," I said, beginning to distribute them with a smile that felt carved from ice, a surprise that really captures the essence of these past few weeks. The silence that followed was the kind of absolute quiet that comes before a storm breaks. 23 envelopes in 23 pairs of hands, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then my mother opened hers first. The sound she made wasn't quite a gasp, wasn't quite a cry. It was the noise of air being forcibly expelled from lungs that had forgotten how to work. The color drained from her face as she stared at the 8x10 glossy photograph, her free hand flying to cover her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, the words barely audible. That broke the dam. Envelope after envelope tore open, and the sounds that followed painted a symphony of horror, disbelief, and dawning rage. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grinding from 10 feet away. Lisa made a choking sound and immediately shielded her children's eyes, though they were too busy playing to notice the adult drama unfolding. Uncle James's beer bottle slipped from his fingers and shattered on the concrete, the crash unnaturally loud in the stunned silence. The photographs were damning in their clarity. Sarah and Marcus in my hallway, her legs wrapped around his waist, Marcus carrying her toward my bedroom, her head thrown back in abandon, Sarah wearing my robe afterward, the two of them entwined on my couch, the timestamps, Witchell, visible in the corner of each image, marking the exact moments of betrayal, the 3rd day of my hospitalization, when I was fighting infection and learning to breathe without a ventilator. "What?" Sarah's voice cracked as she stared at her own image, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror. "Where did you get these?" "Our security cameras," I said, my voice calm as a lake before sunrise. "You remember the ones we installed after the break-ins? They've been recording everything, every visit, every check-in, every moment you two thought you were alone in my house." Marcus had gone pale as chalk, frantically trying to grab photographs from people's hands. But it was too late. The truth was spreading through the crowd like wildfire, passed from hand to hand, examined from every angle. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, his voice pitched high with panic. "Edith, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" My sister Lisa stepped forward, her voice vibrating with fury. "Explain how you fucked her best friend while she was fighting for her life in the hospital? Explain these timestamps that show you've been doing this for months?" Sarah was shaking her head rapidly, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We never meant... It just happened, and then we couldn't stop, and..." "You couldn't stop?" Mom's voice could have frozen hellfire. "You couldn't stop fucking her husband while she was unconscious in a hospital bed?" "We fell in love." Sarah's voice rose to near hysteria. "You don't understand. We tried to fight it, but we fell in love." The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Several people actually stepped backward. Jenny, my college roommate, was staring at Sarah like she'd grown a second head. "You fell in love?" Jenny's voice was barely above a whisper. "While she was dying?" "She wasn't dying," Marcus protested, but his voice sounded hollow even to himself. "She was going to be fine. We knew she was going to be fine." "You knew?" Dad's voice was dangerously quiet as he stepped closer to Marcus. "You knew she was going to survive, so that made it okay to betray her?" Sarah was sobbing now, makeup running down her cheeks in black rivers. "You don't understand the pressure we were under. Taking care of everything, worrying about her, spending so much time together." "Taking care of everything?" I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. "Is that what you call it? Because these photos show you taking care of each other in my bed, wearing my clothes, using my shower. You turned my tragedy into your love nest." The crowd was backing away from them now, a visible circle of revulsion and judgment. Sarah's parents stood frozen in shock, her mother's hand pressed to her chest as if she was having trouble breathing. Mr. Patterson's face had gone from confused to disgusted to something approaching murderous. "Sarah Ann Patterson," her mother said, her voice shaking with a rage I'd never heard before. "What have you done?" "Mom, please." Sarah reached for her mother, but Mrs. Patterson recoiled like Sarah's touch would burn her. Don't you dare touch me right now." Marcus made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Everyone, please. This is between Edith and us. This is private." "Private?" Uncle James had found his voice, and it carried the authority of a man who'd spent 30 years as a police detective. "You made it public the moment you decided to betray your wife with her best friend, in her own house, while she was hospitalized." The crowd was turning uglier by the second. These weren't strangers. These were family members, friends, people who had watched Marcus and me fall in love, who had celebrated our wedding, who had welcomed Sarah into our inner circle like a beloved sister. "I think you both need to leave," Lisa said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. "Now!" Sarah looked around the circle of faces, people who had known her for years, who had trusted her, welcomed her into their homes and hearts, and found nothing but revulsion and disappointment. "Edith," she whispered, her voice broken, "please, I know this looks bad, but if you'll just let me explain—" "Explain what?" I asked, my voice eerily calm in the chaos. "Explain how you comforted me over the phone while sitting in my living room with your hand on my husband's chest. Explain how you lied to my face about taking care of him while you were taking care of yourself in my bed. Explain how you used my keys I gave you out of trust and love, to turn my home into your secret playground." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "There's nothing to explain, Sarah. The photos speak for themselves." Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm, his face a mask of panic and shame. "We need to go. Now." They moved toward the gate like condemned prisoners walking to the gallows, the crowd parting silently to let them pass. Sarah's sobs echoed across the suddenly quiet patio, but nobody moved to comfort her. Just before they reached the gate, Sarah turned back one last time. "I loved you," she said, her voice breaking on every word. "I did love you, Edith. That has to count for something." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had been my sister in all but blood, who knew my deepest secrets and greatest fears, who had held my hand through every major milestone of my adult life. "I loved you too," I said quietly. "That's what makes this unforgivable." She flinched like I'd slapped her, and then they were gone, disappearing through the gate and out of my life forever. The silence that followed was deafening. 21 people stood in my backyard, staring at the gate where my husband and best friend had just fled, trying to process the magnitude of what they'd witnessed. Then my father spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "Jesus Christ, kiddo, I'm so sorry." And suddenly everyone was talking at once, a chorus of outrage and support that washed over me like a warm wave. arms wrapped around me from all directions. My mother, my sister, Jenny, the Henderson twins. Uncle James was already on his phone, calling his contacts at the police department to ask about domestic surveillance laws and divorce proceedings. For the first time in weeks, I felt powerful again. Not like a victim, not like someone to be pitied or managed or carefully handled. Just powerful. The truth was out, spreading through our social circle like wildfire. By morning, everyone would know. By the end of the week, Sarah and Marcus would be social pariahs in a town where reputation was everything. But more than that, I was free. Free from the poisonous weight of their lies, free from the gaslighting and manipulation, free from pretending to be grateful for their betrayal disguised as devotion. I was free to rebuild my life exactly the way I wanted it. And God, it felt good. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Within 24 hours, the story had spread through our entire social network like a California wildfire. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support, offers of help, and updates on Sarah and Marcus's social destruction. Jenny texted me screenshots of Facebook posts where mutual friends were expressing their disgust and cutting ties. Tom sent me a photo of Marcus's car parked outside a motel on the edge of town. Apparently, he'd been kicked out of his brother's house after the story reached the family. His mom called him a disgrace to the family name, Tom wrote. I've never seen Mrs. Morrison so angry. She's actually talking about disowning him. Sarah fared even worse. Her employer, a prestigious law firm where reputation was everything, had somehow gotten wind of the situation. By Tuesday, she was packing up her office. By Wednesday, she was chiamata as posting her apartment for sublet on Craigslist. I found out about that detail from Mrs. Patterson, who called me sobbing. I raised her better than this, she wept into the phone. Richard and I are beside ourselves. We keep asking ourselves where we went wrong, how we failed her so completely. You didn't fail anyone, I told her gently. Sarah made her own choices. This isn't your fault. We're cutting her off, she continued. Financially, emotionally, everything. I can't even look at photographs of her without feeling sick. My own daughter, Edith, my own daughter did this to you. The Pattersons had been like second parents to me for 15 years. Losing Sarah was devastating, but knowing I still had their love and support felt like a small victory in the ruins of my old life. Meanwhile, my divorce attorney was practically salivating over the evidence I'd provided. These photographs are a gift from God, Margaret Chen told me during our consultation, spreading the prints across her mahogany conference table like playing cards. Adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in this state, and this documentation is irrefutable. He won't get a penny of alimony. The house is yours, probably the cars too, and if he tries to contest anything, we'll make these photos part of the public record. Marcus had been calling and texting nonstop, his messages growing increasingly desperate as the reality of his situation sank in. Please, Edith, let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I know I fucked up, but we can work through this. Don't throw away 8 years over a mistake. Sarah seduced me when I was vulnerable. I was scared and confused, and she took advantage. That last message made me laugh out loud. 3 weeks ago, Sarah had been an angel sent from heaven. Now she was a manipulative seductress who had corrupted poor, innocent Marcus, the speed wa. With which he threw her under the bus was almost impressive in its cowardice. I blocked his number and changed the locks on the house. When he showed up on my doorstep that Thursday evening, I watched him through the security camera as he pounded on the door I would never open for him again. "I know you're in there!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the neighborhood. "We need to talk about this like adults!" I sipped my wine and watched him make a fool of himself for 20 minutes before he finally gave up and drove away. The final nail in their coffin came from an unexpected source, Sarah's sister Michelle, who drove up from Phoenix the weekend after the BBQ. Michelle had never liked me much. She'd always thought Sarah was too good for our friendship, but even she was disgusted by what had happened. "I came to talk sense into her," Michelle told me when she showed up at my door Sunday morning. "But I couldn't even get through to her. She's living in some fantasy world where she and Marcus are tragic lovers kept apart by cruel circumstances." "What do you mean?" "She actually told me that you were never right for Marcus, that she'd always known they were meant to be together, and that your accident just made them realize they couldn't live a lie anymore." Michelle's voice was thick with disgust. "She said maybe this was all part of God's plan." The audacity took my breath away. In Sarah's revised version of reality, she was the heroine of her own love story, fighting against the artificial barriers of marriage and friendship to claim her destined soulmate. I was just an obstacle to be overcome, a temporary inconvenience in their greater romantic narrative. "She's lost her mind," Michelle continued. "Completely lost it. Mom and Dad are right to cut her off. She needs to face consequences for what she's done." By the end of the month, Sarah had moved to Seattle, as far from our hometown as she could manage while staying in the continental Unite. D states. Marcus was living in a studio apartment across town, his client base evaporating as word spread through our business community. The Morrison account he'd been so worried about? They'd fired his firm the day after photos started circulating among the partners. I began the process of reclaiming my space and my life. Every trace of Marcus disappeared from the house, his clothes donated to charity, his books boxed up and left on his apartment doorstep, his favorite coffee mug smashed in the garbage disposal with ceremonial satisfaction. Sarah's presence was harder to erase. 15 years of friendship had left marks everywhere: photos on my refrigerator, books she'd given me for birthdays, the coffee maker we'd bought together after a particularly brutal finals week in college. I boxed it all up and put it in storage, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wasn't ready to decide what to do with the remnants of a relationship that had meant everything to me. The house felt different without their energy polluting it. Cleaner, lighter, mine again. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely in my own home. 6 months later, I was standing in my completely redecorated living room, admiring the deep blue walls that had replaced the neutral beige Marcus had insisted on. The space looked nothing like the home I'd shared with him. It was brighter, more colorful, more me than anything I'd lived in for years. "It's gorgeous," declared Carmen, my new friend from the divorce support group I'd joined in the spring. "You have such an eye for design. Have you ever considered interior decorating professionally?" I laughed, arranging fresh sunflowers in the vase that had replaced the formal crystal centerpiece from my wedding registry. "I'm barely keeping up with my regular job, but thanks. It feels good to have a space that's completely mine." Carmen understood. She was 3 years out from her own divorce after discovering her husband's gambling addiction had destroyed their finances and endangered their children's college funds. We'd bonded over the particular rage that comes from being betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. "The anger gets easier," she'd told me during one of our coffee dates, "but it never completely goes away, and that's okay. It reminds you not to settle for less than you deserve." She was right. The sharp, consuming fury I'd felt those first few weeks had mellowed into something steadier, but no less powerful. A fierce protectiveness of my own peace, a zero-tolerance policy for bullshit in any form. My social circle had reshuffled completely. Some people had surprised me with their unwavering support, while others had disappointed me with their awkward attempts at neutrality. "There are always two sides to every story," my cousin Beth had said, and I'd realized with crystalline clarity that I didn't need people in my life who could find the other side of adultery and betrayal. But new friendships had bloomed in unexpected places. The women from divorce group, my physical therapist who'd become a genuine friend, neighbors I'd never bothered to know when I was coupled up and insular. My social calendar was fuller now than it had been in years. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Margaret Chen had been right. The photographs were pure gold in legal terms. I kept the house, the car, and most of our assets. Marcus got his clothes, his personal effects, and the crushing weight of being known as the man who cheated on his wife while she was hospitalized. He'd made one last attempt at reconciliation during the final court hearing, approaching me in the hallway with the same wounded puppy expression that had once made me melt. "Edith, please. I know I made a mistake, but we had something real. 8 years can't just disappear." I'd looked at him, really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not even pity. Just the mild irritation you might feel toward a stranger who was blocking your path. "You're right," I'd said. 8 years can't disappear, but they can be redefined. Now when I think about those 8 years, I'll remember that I was married to someone who was capable of betraying me at my most vulnerable moment. That's not something I want to preserve. He'd opened his mouth to protest, but I'd already walked away. The judge signed the papers an hour later, and just like that, I was free. Sarah had tried to contact me once, 3 months ago, through a mutual friend from college who didn't know the full story. The message was pathetic in its self-serving desperation. "Tell Edith I'm sorry. Tell her I never meant for any of this to happen. Tell her I miss her every day, and if she could find it in her heart to forgive me, maybe we could try to rebuild our friendship." I'd laughed until I cried when Jenny read me that message. The audacity was breathtaking. The idea that I would want to rebuild anything with someone who had shown me exactly who she was when she thought I was too weak to fight back. "What should I tell her?" Jenny had asked. "Tell her I said no thank you," I'd replied, "and then block her number. I'm done being anyone's backup plan." Now, standing in my sunlight-filled living room with Carmen chattering about her daughter's upcoming graduation, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with authenticity. This life I was building, these friendships based on genuine compatibility rather than history, this home that reflected my actual taste, this job where I'd gotten 2 promotions since my divorce, was more mine than anything I'd had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from my physical therapist, Alex, asking if I wanted to grab dinner and catch a movie this weekend. We'd been dancing around the possibility of something more than friendship for weeks now, but I was taking things slowly. Not because I was afraid of being hurt again, but because I was enjoying the luxury of choosing my own pace. "New boyfriend?" Carmen asked with a grin, noticing my smile. "Maybe," I said. "We'll see. I'm in no hurry." And I wasn't. For the first time in my adult life, I was genuinely happy being alone, which made the prospect of eventually sharing my life with someone feel like a choice rather than a necessity. The sun was setting through my new windows, casting golden light across the walls I'd painted myself, the furniture I'd chosen myself, the life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. It was good to be free. A year and 2 months after the BBQ that changed everything, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, the one downtown with the good Wi-Fi and the barista who remembered my order, when I saw him. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past 14 months. His hair had started going gray at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes that I didn't remember. His clothes were rumpled, his posture defeated. He was sitting alone at a corner table, staring into a cup of coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. Then I remembered the security footage of him carrying Sarah toward my bedroom while I was unconscious in a hospital bed, and the feeling passed. He looked up and saw me, and the expression that crossed his face was complex: shame, regret, something that might have been hope. He stood up slowly, like a man walking to his execution, and approached my table. "Edith," his voice was hoarse, uncertain. Would you mind if—" I sat down for a minute. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Free country." He sat carefully, like he was afraid the chair might collapse under him. Up close, the damage was even more apparent. He'd lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His skin had a grayish tinge that spoke of too much stress and not enough sleep. "You look good," he said quietly. "Happy." "I am happy." It was the truth, plain and simple. "I heard you got promoted again, senior account manager now." "That's right." He nodded, picking at the edge of his coffee cup. "I also heard you're seeing someone. Alex, from the physical therapy place?" "We're taking things slowly, but yes." I didn't ask how he knew. News traveled fast in a town this size. That's good. You deserve to be happy." The conversation felt surreal, like we were reading lines from a play neither of us had rehearsed for. This polite, stilted exchange between two people who used to know each other's deepest secrets, who used to finish each other's sentences. "How's Sarah?" I asked, not because I cared, but because the silence was becoming uncomfortable. His face crumpled slightly. "I don't know. It didn't work out. Turns out when you build a relationship on betrayal and lies, it doesn't have much of a foundation." Shocking revelation. He winced at the ice in my voice. "Edith, I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think you could ever forgive me? Not forget, I know that's impossible, but maybe someday find it in yourself to forgive?" I studied his face. This man who had shared my bed for 8 years, who had promised to love and cherish me in sickness and in health. The man who had thrown all of that away for a few months of excitement with my best friend. "I already have forgiven you," I said, and watched surprise flicker across his features. "You have?" "Forgiveness isn't for you, Marcus. It's for me. Carrying around anger and resentment was like drinking poison and expecting you to get sick. So yes, I've forgiven you. I've forgiven Sarah too." Hope bloomed in his eyes. "Then maybe we could—" "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation," I continued, and watched that hope die. "Forgiveness means I no longer actively wish you harm. It doesn't mean I trust you, or want you in my life, or think you deserve a second chance. Some mistakes are too big to come back from." He slumped in his chair like I'd physically deflated him. "I think about it every day," he said quietly. "What I threw away. What we had. The life we could have built together. We did build a life together, for 8 years. And then you burned it down while I was unconscious in a hospital bed." I finished my latte and gathered my purse. "The life we could have built is irrelevant now because you chose a different path." "I made a mistake." "No." I stood up, looking down at him with something that wasn't quite pity and wasn't quite contempt. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. A mistake is double booking lunch plans. What you did was a choice. A series of choices. You chose Sarah over me, lies over truth, immediate gratification over long-term commitment. Own it." I started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness someday. Real happiness, built on honesty and respect. But you won't find it by trying to resurrect something you killed." As I walked toward the door, I heard him call my name one last time. I didn't turn around. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean, full of the promise of change and new beginnings. I had dinner plans with Alex tonight, nothing fancy, just takeout and a movie at his place, and I was looking forward to it with the uncomplicated pleasure of someone who had learned to appreciate simple joys. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "Wine night tomorrow? I have so much drama to catch you up on." I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely, my place at 7. This was Mac. I life now. Good friends who showed up when they said they would, a career that challenged and fulfilled me, a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than habit and convenience. A home that was entirely my own space, decorated with my choices and filled with my energy." As I walked to my car, I caught my reflection in a storefront window and paused. The woman looking back at me was confident, at peace, genuinely content. She bore little resemblance to the broken, trusting person who had handed over her house keys to her best friend 15 months ago. That woman had believed that love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt, that loyalty meant accepting whatever treatment people gave you, that forgiveness meant pretending betrayal never happened. This woman knew better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something better from the wreckage. It's proving that you didn't need the people who betrayed you to be happy. It's showing them, and yourself, that their worst behavior revealed more about their character than yours. I drove home to my beautiful house, to my peaceful life, to my chosen family of people who had earned their place in my world through consistency and respect. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt sorry for Marcus and Sarah. Not because of what I'd done to them, but because they would never know the particular satisfaction of looking in the mirror and genuinely liking the person staring back. That was a gift they'd given me, in their twisted way. They'd forced me to discover my own strength, my own worth, my own capacity for building a life that was authentically mine. I wouldn't thank them for it. They didn't deserve gratitude for accidentally helping me become a better person through their betrayal, but I would treasure it nonetheless. After all, sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow in the richest soil, and nothing fertilizes growth quite like the ashes of what came before.